Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today. We are excited to have you here for our Pathlock Innovation Series. I'm going to be putting in the chat right now a link to pathlock.com/innovation-series. You can click on that link and it'll take you to our website and the schedule of events. There's one more event left today. And then there's a bunch of events throughout the week that you can register for. So if you haven't registered for all the sessions and you would like to, you can go ahead and look at that schedule and you will be able to attend those. Our session right now is with Adi Goka, and he will introduce himself in just a moment. My name's Stephanie Anderson. I'm the Global Webinar Manager here at Pathlock. The session today is titled How to Use the Power of Attribute-Based Controls in Your SAP Environment. And Adi, will you go to the next slide? If you have any audio issues during this webinar, please click on Preferences and then Audio. From there, you can check to see if you're using the appropriate audio device. You can also click on the play sound to check if you can hear the sound coming from your speakers. There will be a Q&A session following the presentation, so please type any questions into the Q&A chat box for our speakers to answer at the end of the event. You can put your questions into the questions box for us. To prevent background noise, everyone is on mute. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Adi to proceed with the presentation.
Got it. Thanks, Stephanie. Hey guys, this is Adi Goka here. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here for Pathlock and a GRC advisor. I have about 21 years of experience architecting different GRC tools and setting up security solutions for clients. So that being said, let me quickly go to the next slide so that I can start off with who we are as Pathlock. So Pathlock is a market leader in application security and controls automation. And we have about 500 plus worldwide employees, and we have customers amounting of close to about 1,300 plus worldwide. And what we do is we want to create a tool set for different clients to support their security infrastructure, and also work with different partners to kind of take your security to the next level. So that being said, what we do here at Pathlock and what we pride ourselves really is to create a 360-degree protection for all your applications, data, users, and processes. So when we talk about applications, we are talking about several spanning different ERPs, different cloud applications, legacy systems, enterprise systems. And we used to be called Greenlight before, so we have real-time connections and connections of about 140 plus connectors, adapters, etc., that read into different aspects of the data, connecting to several ERP systems, systems in the cloud, as well as legacy systems. Now, when we talk about users and securing access to the users, we have different tools that kind of enable this. We have access analysis, which is basically looking at what is your user infrastructure right now and what access are they provisioned with. We also have tools that can do several user access review processes, wherein managers can come in and certify that certain access exists for certain users and it is still relevant and pertinent. We also look at several ways of setting up access management and compliant access management, where we can go in and make sure that SODs and stuff like that does not creep into your security infrastructure. And lastly, we also perform decentralized and centralized, as well as several aspects of the emergency access through roles, groups, etc., depending on what the constructs of security are within those particular applications. And this part, what we call for user access analysis, is basically the can-do analysis of what the users can perform, which actions can the users perform in the system, and what transactions they can execute, etc. That being said, we also look at all activities and monitor business transactions across your enterprise, spanning several ERPs. So that's where the Pathlock differentiator comes in, wherein we look at several business processes, we rank and score each of these business processes in terms of risk, and we also provide aspects of and processes to kind of provide mitigation controls and remediation for this particular access that's pertinent with all the users in the system. Now, when we talk about threat vectors and IT controls, we also have several aspects through our recently acquired company SAST, which talks about essentially vulnerability management, threat detection, application security testing, and compliance testing. This is to make sure that you guys have a consistent view of risk across your entire platform. So when you're talking about vulnerability management and threat detection, we have about 4,000 checks that monitor different sides of the application and different clients. And no matter where the threat vector lies, we can provide effective measures to put against it. And this is basically monitoring of all the time, right? So we're not just doing it at a particular cadence. We can monitor it just in time, like ad hoc. That's where the Pathlock advantage actually proves very useful for our clients. Now, when we talk about access governance, what you're seeing in the slide is basically 3 different silos that we segregate our offerings in terms of role design, in terms of access governance, process controls, as well as cybersecurity management. So within access governance, you have several aspects of within the ERPs, which is role design and redesign. So basically, if across various constructs of security. So if it is groups like Azure AD, etc., we can do that. We can also look at really granular permissions across several SAP systems and Oracle EBS, etc. And all of these roles and role redesigns that are very important for clients as the security model deteriorates through time. We actually help out with that. We also help out with compliant provisioning, where we minimize the option of SODs creeping into your system. Very robust segregation of duties, risk analysis, rule set spanning several applications, and we harmonize that particular rule set to business activities that kind of span across this thing. So, for example, if you have Oracle EBS, there is several aspects to that particular thing and business functions that we harmonize across SAP, across Ariba, across several other platforms. And user access certifications and reviews are also another thing that we can perform within the access governance portion. And like I said before, the emergency access management in various applications can also be. On the process control side, which is basically what we're going to talk about today, which is basically dynamic authorizations and setting up control enforcement, transaction blocking, and data masking. And basically, we call this sliver data-centric security. So, and we'll get into this in the next few slides, and then we're also going to talk about, show you a small demo wherein we can showcase what the Pathlock offering can do. Now, on the cybersecurity management side, like I said, we have the SAST offering, which does several aspects of code scanning and continuous control monitoring across different clients of different systems that you guys have. And then there's a detection and response, and then we send the notification off as part of a workflow or not to several actors that must act in terms of this thing, whether it be a data protection officer, whether it be your basis people inside your team to stop the, for example, a denial of service attack, etc. So we have all of this happening in terms of on the real-time basis, and that's something that Pathlock does for their clients. So today, as part of this presentation, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about specifically SAP role-based access. And I don't know how many of you guys are SAP are running SAP, but what we're going to talk about is basically extending the role-based access controls that are available through SAP. Now, part of the agenda is going to involve what do SAP roles do right now and what they cannot do or what they cannot do effectively inside the system, and how to enhance and extend these roles by not really going on and hiring more contractors, etc., but then providing a framework where you can manage and extend the functionality of the roles without actually trying to change the roles at all. We'll get into a small demonstration, like I said, and then we're gonna summarize, and then there can be a portion where you can ask questions about the last 5 minutes. That being said, let's get into the data security stuff. So right now, if you look at what the regulators are looking at, right, they're looking at actual data controls itself. So it's not okay to just expose unnecessary data to users across your ERP landscape. What happens when we are talking about bad actors like countries right now? So it becomes very important for you to secure your data across your entire enterprise, spanning multiple applications and your critical business processes wherever they lie. It could be lying in HR, it could be lying in finance and supply chain. But regulators, when they look at all of this data, and through any industry-specific modules, for example, it could be a mergers and acquisition of 2 oil companies or 2 refineries or divestitures in the same group. Your sensitive data right now is spread across hundreds of transactions within several applications, and that amounts to, if you really want to mask these fields and show only data pertinent to that particular application, or whoever needs access to that, only those people should see it. We are talking about really thousands of fields. And when we talk about thousands of fields, you can understand how complicated the particular paradigm might get. So let me quickly change my slide. So real quickly, and if there are any SAP security administrators or designers in the house, you'll understand that roles are small bundles of transaction codes, etc., that you use in SAP to encapsulate portions of access. Now we use the roles almost ubiquitously throughout your enterprise, right? If, for example, if you bring in another application like CRM, you're creating roles for it, etc. Where the roles really excel is basically reporting on different segregation of duties, because they're bundles of transactions really. Where they also look at is basically they look at they're designed within that particular platform. So basically you'll have CRM roles in CRM, etc. And you can do access recertification very simply with all of this. Now, when we talk about roles, and when you talk about several ways that these roles can be designed, really what you're talking about is, if you go, the smallest, least privilege that you can give to a user is 0.3 in terms of the activity level. So when you talk about these activity levels, there are several in SAP, like 0.1 would be create, 0.2 would be change. Now 0.3 would be view, and we are talking about placing controls on even that view, because most of this, because let's say that there are some users within several plants that should not look at certain BOMs, right? Bill of materials, which, for example, if you're an Apple and you don't want to expose data regarding your iPhone 18 or something like that. So to everybody, right? There should be only the research team that should look at that data. So when we talk about where the roles struggle, it is basically SOD enforcement. It is also where, because of the 0.3 being the least privileged, you cannot really prevent anybody from seeing that particular data. So if somebody is looking at your purchase order header table, they know everything about the vendor, etc. They can view vendor bank accounts, for example. You want to prevent that, and you want to prevent people taking data away from your system and then probably selling it out in the market or the dark web. So that is where the roles really struggle, wherein you can place your business strategy and align it with your policies on your data and adjust those entitlements really quickly. So it is if you look at several ways where you can change your security, you would look at, for example, getting to your SAP security team, and then you go and then you give them the requirement, and they design the control. They have to test the control. We're talking about at least 2 to 3 month period wherein before this particular set of roles comes into your SAP system, right, and is promoted to production, etc. Now, also the other thing that that roles cannot do is basically with every control that you introduce within the system, your roles, for example, split between people who should have access and who should not have access. So even if you created like, let's say, a custom authorization object, etc., what would happen is basically you're separating, you're splitting the roles between who should have access and who should not. So if you start out, let's say, after your role design, with 4,000 roles, they never remain 4,000. You're going to end up adding more and more roles as time progresses because every security model deteriorates with time. That being said, let me quickly. So securing data and the problems that actually come in when securing data, right, is very hard because most enterprises, the average cost of compliance on the data side is about $10,000 per employee, and this is the industry standard, as was reported. And E&Y reported that GDPR compliance alone, which is basically the new regulation in Europe, averages for 156 million per company. And these are really big companies, and still this is a really sizable cost. Now, 78% of these companies also believe that this paradigm is not going to change, it's not going to reduce, it's going to increase. And 27 odd percent of security breaches were the actual increase from 2020 to 2021. And we don't have the numbers for 2022 yet, but suffice it to say, it's probably going to be in the high 30s. So that is the problem here that we are choosing to actually solve. So when we build roles, like I talked about, there are several. We don't want you to change your roles that often, right? We want to keep a consistent view of your roles. Now, what we want to do, however, is create a separate tier of or a control model on top of your roles, wherein you use different attributes of the data, attributes of the user, and the context in which this access is occurring. For example, we have a client who did not want any data downloads beyond a certain point, certain time of day, because any sensitive data should be blocked if somebody is downloading at very odd hours. So that being said, that kind of amounts to what the context of this data is. But then you can use the user attributes. For example, ITAR compliance suggests that we should not expose any of the USML, US munitions list to anybody who's not a US person. And now that we can use the attribute of the user, which is the citizenship, and we can prevent such particular access to the data to go out. There are also like data attributes that we can use, which is basically the attribute to a sensitive folders all the way to objects like S_dataset within SAP that we can actually secure. Data attributes also pertain to if it is sensitive bombs, sensitive tables, etc. Basically, any content within your SAP system we can actually use as a data attribute, and then kind of use an access definition policy, which will either allow that access or not. Lastly, on the top, if you look at transaction attributes, we can also block entire transactions out, even if they have. And you will see this in the short demo that follows. And so when we combine all of these, what we're talking about is several rules that you can place on top of your roles without touching your roles. So you're not going to create any additional controls within your roles, so they don't split, they don't they stay as is. But with utilizing the attribute-based access controls, all of these attributes can be utilized to kind of give you a centralized a view of data control. And that's where Pathlock excels, wherein we have a tool that provides us attribute-based access controls to create policies that govern different aspects of this data. Now, we can do several things that are available here, right? When we use policies, we can do dynamic data masking. So, for example, if you did not want to show a particular data element or particular field in a particular transaction, we can mask it. We can mask it using a template. You can also mask the entire number. You can mask the last 4 digits of the social security number, for example. Any of the PII data, sensitive data, can be mapped and masked. The other thing that we also can show, and I will show this in the demo real quickly, is basically exfiltration controls. And there's been a lot of data theft that is happening within the companies, and then that companies do not even realize. And so what we'll see is a really small example of exfiltration, where somebody's trying to steal the data from, let's say, an SC16 or an SC11 transaction code. So what we need in terms of attribute-based access controls, and what benefits does attribute-based access controls give you, is basically these are very simple to configure and maintain. And you'll see when I show you the policy itself, how simply with one line in the policy you can create various definitions of this data, and also create access control decisions based on that data. And this particular policy can be assigned to several people using user groups, dedicated user groups, that kind of this thing, or dedicated dummy roles. And we can go into that in the demo as well. And we can align ourselves with the SAP's authorization concepts, but we can also go beyond it. And that would be something that I would want to also cover. So I'm sorry. Yeah, so some of the use cases that are available here on the contextual basis are examples of PA20, for example, displaying of HR master data, any of the private data that should not be available for everybody to see within your HR system. We have the Pathlock rules engine that kind of blocks it. And using some very poignant context, which is basically after hours, for example. And to give you a very quick example about COVID, many corporations that are our clients have kind of seen that after COVID, they had access to sensitive data being consumed by somebody who's in a different country, and then they could not place why that is so, except that this was the employee who actually, because it was remote work, they moved to their home country. It could be Iran, it could be whatever. But here, what we can do is we can actually tie it down if the access is after hours, if the access is coming from a separate IP, and all of those particular contexts can be, and you'll see how quickly it is enforceable within the particular tool. So the dynamic protection that I was just talking about is how we can actually, how this data is being accessed. It could be through the GUI, it could be through a portal, it could be Fiori, it could be a query. So all of that can be part of the access control mechanism now. It could also be country, region, and IP address. It could also be time. This could be basically a number of attempts that somebody is making to access a particular data, or circumventing different constructs that are available for security. It could be T codes, sensitive master data transactions, and it could also be any of the user types that are available within the SAP system. And this is system-wide enforcement. So you have one particular aspect of the policy that secures many different data elements. So for example, if you have a bank account that should not be seen by certain for a particular vendor, I can mask it for that particular vendor during a particular time, and it's also so I can combine different policies to create an access control decision that is very nifty for the data protection officers, for example, as well as security administrators. Okay, I apologize, guys. So, okay, let's quickly jump into the demo, wherein I can actually show you some of the advantages and how quickly and easily you can set up these policies. That being said, so on here, if you guys can see my screen, I have two different users that are logged into the SAP application that we have here, and they're logged into the same system, SAP GCM. The user on the left is called Dan. He will be our policy administrator for this session. And the user on the right is called SAP Dev, and he's basically the bad actor who's going to try to access different policies, and then we'll see how we can block his access and prevent him from from seeing different data. So real quickly, and I show this I show this at the start of the presentation because I don't want you guys to be confused over what Dan's access is set up as and what SAP Dev's access is set up as. So if you look here, Dan's access, for example, is set up with profiles SAP All and SAP New. And if I go to the SAP Dev site, and if I go and show you the access for this user, he's also set up with SAP All and SAP New. So what exactly is happening here is this is not required for the solution to work, but I just wanted you guys to see that no restrictions are being placed on the SAP side of things. So any restrictions that you will be seeing from henceforth would only be coming from the policy. So that being said, let me quickly show you what the policy really looks like in our system. Let me get out of this. And if I go in and show you the policy, and this is basically how simple it is to actually set up the policy. So we have different transaction codes here. For example, you have the AppServe policy, you have BP, the business partner, you have FP50, some of the basic transaction codes, as well as some. If I scroll down, you'll also see that there's any of the Z transaction codes. It could also be Fiori tiles in case of if you're running S4. What I can do is I can provide transaction control, and I can also provide data controls. So what transaction control really means is that I can actually protect different transactions and make sure that this person, SAP Dev, does not actually get into the transaction itself. So let's see one quick example here. If I look at this and quickly go into, let's pick the RZ11 transaction code, which is a basis transaction code, and nobody should have access to the RZ11 transaction code, even though they're in the basis team. I think it's just a few people who are designated who kind of should get into the RZ11 because it can change your profile parameters, change your login policies, etc., etc. So now if you see that this particular person, even though he has SAP All and SAP New, he cannot access several transaction codes, including RZ11 here, which is illustrated. But what this does is basically it gives you access to control at the transaction level. The second thing would be data level controls, which is what happens when this user goes into a particular aspect of the data. So let's see that example really quickly. So if SAP Dev, suppose say he's going into XK03, and then he wants to view a particular payment transaction for that particular for a particular vendor here. So I had talked about how we can use policies before, and what I'm going to show you is how we can use the policy in a certain context. So now so I'm just going to pick one of these guys. Now, when this user tries to set up this thing, and let me show you the context as well, so that will provide a better example for you guys. So when I get into the context of this particular access that's happening right now, I have set up that this particular IP group over here is basically blacklisted. So 0.0.0.0 to 10.0.30.145 is actually a list of blacklisted IP addresses. So real quickly, even we have to check where SAP Dev is coming from. So let me quickly go into the transaction SC37, wherein I'm going to show you the that particular where this user is logging in from. Yes. Oh. And if I run this function module for that particular user, SAP Dev, here, and if I check, this user is coming from actually 10.0.30.141, which is well within that particular blacklisted IP range. Now, if and I would like you guys to pay attention, it's like 10.0.30.141 again. Now, when I go in here and then when he's in the blacklisted IP range, I can say that block his bank key, his bank account number, all of the pertaining, all of the account holder name, etc., for this particular vendor. And so he cannot see any of these. And this is just by changing the context. Now, when I talked about how quickly it is and how easy it is to change the policy itself, when you go into the this particular IP blacklisted IP range, and if you, for example, if you exclude this particular person, SAP Dev, the user on the right, and I'm just going to say 10.0.30.139 is a higher limit, and then I'm going to save this data, and I want you guys to pay attention how quickly this takes effect. So when he goes back in here, so let's say, and then he comes back, he can actually see the bank key, the bank account, and the account holder name. Now, all of this data is now available to be viewed, etc. Now, the bank accounts can also be masked in terms of the last 4 digits or the first, five digits of the bank key, etc. We can apply all such controls to any data element within SAP, and that's where the power of the context comes in, and the power of the data and all the attributes were put together. So real quickly, what else can you do with this particular thing? So you've seen how we can block the transaction itself. You've also seen how we can mask several aspects of the transaction. Now let me show you what happens if this user tries to get into, let's say SAP Dev is a user who's just been fired, and then he's going into S11, and then what he wants to do is he wants to take the, for example, I'm going to look at the purchase order header, and then he's trying to display this information. So for example, he goes into the content, and then when he tries to display it, he can display it, but when he goes to kind of download that particular information, we can actually block him, because I have designated that my EKKO table is sensitive data, and nobody should be able to download it. And this is affected through user groups, and so SAP Dev is placed in a user group that has these policy restrictions applied to him based on the table itself. So this is one example of data exfiltration that we can look at, wherein he cannot access this particular aspect. Now, the other thing SE16 and other data browser transactions are very prevalent in many organizations, and nobody has sufficient controls on it. Even though you have table groups, they're really generic table groups and spanning multiple hundreds of tables. Even SWLIN and SWNAM, which is the new authorization objects within SAP, they can secure one table at a time, but it becomes really cumbersome to kind of get into that level of detail, that level of masking, so that level of data protection. So now let me go into the table Mara and show you what else I can do with this particular thing, right? So when this user actually goes into Mara and tries to display several aspects of the data, right, you will see that the material type over here is basically right over here, and that there's two material types. One is the FERT and the other is the VERP. Now, FERT is my finished goods, and I have deemed that this is a very sensitive element where I do not want anybody to look at any of the finished products. However, if it comes down to VERP, which is the packaging materials, I have no data restrictions on that. It's pretty distinct. So what happens if this user actually executes, wants to download this particular table, right? Now, I'm just going to put it in text real quickly, and then I'm going to put it on the desktop. I'm going to say innovation, and I'm going to generate this. So the download is complete, and it's gone to my desktop. What I will do very quickly is go here and then look at the innovation right there. And then what I can do is I'm just going to use Notepad to open it. So I have disallowed everybody to look at any of the finished goods, but then I can allow the packaging materials to be downloaded. So I can place selective restrictions on the data and what people can download, what people can see, what people can what masked information they can see, et cetera, based on all of this information. That's the data exfiltration use case that I wanted to show you guys. Now, at the same time, the other things that you would want to check out is when you're using attribute-based access controls, you're actually looking at the attributes of the data itself. So there's several other things that are more powerful that you can do here. For example, on the context side of things, I have net price restrictions on POs, right? The price restriction is $10,000. So anybody who has should not be allowed to release POs over $10,000. However, if the PO is less than $10,000, it can be released. So this would take you to implement using SAP roles. It will take you to implement a release strategy. It would, and somebody needs to monitor it, and then your role split two ways throughout your supply chain role infrastructure. Here, it's just with one particular line here, which is saying that net price restriction greater than $10,000. I business process control very effectively within the system. Now, let me quickly illustrate that example for you. When the user goes into ME28 and is trying to release a particular purchase order. So I'm going to choose the supervisor here, and then if I show you, there's several examples here. If you look at the greater than $10,000 and this one, right? If I pick that and if I choose to release it, because there's a restriction that has been placed on net price, the user SAP dev has exceeded the allowed value of PO to be released. So this is how I can control different aspects of the business process itself to place controls on the business process. So you do not need a really cumbersome tool like SAP process controls to kind of affect these particular changes. They're really very self-explanatory, and then all of this can be achieved in terms of one line in a policy that can be actively changed to 100,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 that is maintained by the administrators within that particular enterprise. So so the last one that I wanted to actually show you is one more use case wherein you have access to actually stop an SRE, because I'm looking at actual number of the PO, right? And that's an attribute of the data. I can utilize that particular data to make very pointed decisions on segregation of duties issues. And for example, if I would like to prevent anybody from creating a PO as well as doing a goods receipt for it, now it becomes very easy for me because I'm looking at the attribute of the PO document number. And this, let me quickly show you that example wherein, let me get out of here. And then, so first let's get into SE16. I'm going to show you all of the purchase orders that this person, SAP Dev, has created. And over here, if I'm going to ERNAM, let me plug in SAP Dev here. And then if you look at it, these are all the purchase orders that SAP Dev has created in the system. And now if I choose one of them, let me choose this one. And if let me take that guy. And if I go into goods transfer, goods receipt, transaction codes within SAP. Okay, there it is. And if I plug this in over here, and this is basically what he's trying to do to, so he's trying to actually, he created a purchase order here, and then he's also trying to do a goods transfer for that particular purchase order. And if you look at it, we can actually stop it because through the attribute-based access controls, I actually looked at SAP, that particular thing as an SOD violation. And my rule suggests that anybody who has created the PO should not also be able to release it. Now, a lot of tools within the SOD market, right, will tell you where the access restrictions are, or where the contiguous business process are in one particular person's user access. But here I can actually go ahead and actively stop it. So there's no SOD happening. So there's a lot of cloud that you get with your auditors when you actually enforce a control at this level. Just rather than just looking at, okay, this person has an SOD and how to remediate it or mitigate it. Here, I'm just saying a blanket statement saying that nobody should actually do that particular thing. So this is all that is, such things are possible now because you're actually looking at the attributes based access controls, and you don't have to change roles for this. You don't have to enact additional controls for it. All the controls are managed through a simple change in the policy that is part of that Pathlock tool. And so this is basically how the I have several rules set up here. If you guys will look at it, this risk score, I can create a conjugated rule based on several attributes of several data aspects or data elements within SAP2. So this risk score may be something that that pertains to the actual value of a particular invoice. It could be releasing of a PO. It could be payment terms, who can change the payment terms, or credit limits, etc. So I can actually enforce this based on one particular line in the policy and designate it as a context. So that level of control is now available to me using the Pathlock tool that is seldom enacted efficiently through roles. And I wanted to highlight several aspects of that. So where can we actually go ahead and do all of this, right? So now when we are a SAP certified bolt-on. So all of this tool is available for our users to implement and this thing. So it's not just a standalone tool for only data masking. It can perform all of these activities and lend itself to very tight control on your data-centric security, on your transaction, etc., and your SODs. For example, if you have the SOD violation example here, you would have to, for example, in order to generate, like in the rule set, some pesky transaction codes for, let's say there's an example of the same example, right? So they're using the PO, but you're creating a PO in one purchasing organization, but you're doing a goods receipt for another organization. Now I can, if just detecting this within SAP GRC or any other GRC tool will require you to maintain org level rules, etc. But here it's very simply enacted through one particular statement. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. So that being said, I would let me go back to my slides and see if you guys have any so the additional use cases that we can provide here is basically masking of PII data. Obviously, we've seen that with HR, bank accounts, and any particular sensitive fields that you want to protect. We can also do mask data fields and transactions that are unnecessary. So, for example, if a particular user sitting in a plant does not need access to certain this thing, or if you have a transient workforce wherein you have customer service reps across that do not that are employed only during the holidays, for example, right? We can actually prevent them from seeing any of the pricing info. So also we can mitigate data that comes in basically all of the financial things. So real quickly, I wanted to highlight what Pathlock can do for you guys. So we can discover where all the data is in your system. We can see where it maps to a particular regulatory compliance, which is basically GDPR or ITAR, etc. And we can mask those particular data elements. We can also provide transaction control, like you just saw, and provide access to based on context. And we can also utilize threat detection, etc., and make sure that the data is secure. So, and just to wrap up, I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand, as a summary, where we are at. So we can better meet compliance requirements without utilizing roles, without changing roles even. We can reduce the cost of your audits and compliance, improve your credibility with your auditors, integrate data protection into actual business processes, which seldom happens because you're only looking at this thing. We are actually looking at the data itself. Then we can minimize the data exposure and risk, and then we can wrap all of this around a very proactive policy that's maintained by, for example, GDPR users in Europe, CCPA users in California, etc., etc. So I'll open the line for questioning, and if you have a question, please type it up into the chat box, and I can go through that.
Thank you, Adi, for your presentation. We just have a few minutes for questions. Just looking. So the question is, for accepted SOD risk, the software can perform lookbacks over time, correct?
That would be correct, yes. And so we work with, we have a very robust application log that works in addition to and on top of the SAP logs that are already available. So we can actually report on all of this data and provide you exactly where the SOD occurred or did not occur.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. We have another session coming up for the Pathlock Innovation Series in about 10 minutes. If you want to join that session, please click on the link that I put in chat. You can register for that or any of the sessions coming up tomorrow. Audie, can you go to the next slide? And if you would like to book a meeting with us, you can email events@pathlock.com before the January 31st and mention that you attended this session at the Innovation Summit, and you can enter to win a $25 Starbucks virtual card. And with that, we just wanted to say thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you at more of the events coming up this week.